Hello, it's Kevin from Let Me Tech You, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over Traffic Manager and some of the different Traffic Manager routing methods that you can utilize to provide better endpoint availability to your end users, depending on different methods, whether it's weighted, performance-based, priority, going based off subnets, geolocation. But in this video, I'm also going to show one of the methods, which is the weighted method, to be able to allow users to access a website using the Azure Traffic Manager profile that you set up. So before we get started, I'm using Azure here. So this is a DNS based tool that we're going to be talking about that will allow you to not only use this for endpoints that's within Azure, but also endpoints that's outside of Azure. So there are 6 different routing methods that you can utilize using a traffic manager. And this is different than using just a typical load balancer, because what it's doing is it's not actually load balancing the traffic to your endpoints. It's actually just acting as a DNS. It's actually taking the DNS responses, sending them back to the recursive DNS server that you queried, and then just telling you which endpoint to go to. So, but you can combine this with a load balancer in a sense if you want to load balance the traffic also across the endpoints that you'll be targeting. So I have 2 profiles here, but the one we'll be talking about is this first one. So like I mentioned, when you first come into Traffic Manager, you'll have the option to create one here. And then, so this name does have to be unique. So if I try to do like say ABC, it's going to already be taken. Or if you try to do Microsoft or something, it's not going to let you because it's, trademarked or whatever. So then going down into our routing methods here, we have a couple different ones that we are going to talk about. Actually, if you want, you could actually go over to my site, letmetechyou.com, and there's a more detailed explanation on the different ones here. So we have performance-based, weighted, priority, geographic, multi-value, and subnet. So performance is basically based off of the best endpoint in the different geographical locations that the end users would connect to based off of latency performance. Weighted would be, it allows you to set weights on each endpoint. So let's say you have 6 endpoints and be one being the best and all the way up to 6 being the worst. Not necessarily worse because you don't want it to, it's a terrible application or endpoint that's connecting to. It could be for various reasons. So that's just going to determine how or which server gets utilized the most when the DNS queries are coming across. And it's just a good way also to bring new endpoints in and out. So you can change the weights and things like that. So then you also got priority. So this method chooses priority endpoint based off multiple. So basically you can set one primary endpoint. So all the traffic will go to that endpoint. And then if it goes down, you can have secondary endpoints that the traffic will route over to. You got geographic, and then basically this option is great for just like localization, data sovereignty mandates. Just so like if you want to direct users to specific endpoints based on where the DNS query originates. For example, you might have some reason to keep your data in a certain country, or things like that, or you don't want certain users to be able to access things based off the country that they're in. That would be a good reason to use geographic. And then you got multi-value. So for profiles where you can only have, say you want all your IPv4, IPv6 address as endpoints, you can set up a multi-value profile. And what this will do is you can actually send multiple IPv4 and IPv6 addresses in one single DNS query. And so what this will allow you to do is it allows the client to do multiple DNS retries. And then in that case, less DNS queries are needing to come to the traffic manager, but it also allows for you to, if an endpoint does go down, it could then automatically route it to another endpoint without having to keep sending more DNS queries. And then also you have subnet, which allows you to map a set of end user IP address ranges to a specific endpoint. So this could be for, like, say you got your corporate location, you want a specific group of IP addresses to access a specific app, or you want to block a specific ISP, things like that. So I'm going to get into this here. So like I said, I already got this built out. You put the resource group in. So this creates what I've already created here. So I'm going to exit out. And so it's very simple. We get the DNS name here. So this DNS name is what's going to be queried using your CNAME or your DNS name that you will point to this. So you want to point in your DNS manager to this, and then this is what's going to actually determine which endpoint you go to. And then so you're under your configuration settings. It's going to already have your routing method selected based off of what you created. This can be changed in here as well, but I wouldn't recommend changing that once it's already been set, due to the possibility of dropping traffic and losing connections for current endpoints. Then so you got your DNS TTLs here and how many seconds. Your endpoint monitoring. So this is going to actually make sure that the endpoints are healthy and alive. So whether you're doing HTTPS or HTTP, and then the port, and then what path. Basically, this is going to be kind of to determine if it's what you want to query to see if it's alive. And then you can do some expected status codes. So like you should expect to do a 200, or if you have some custom ones like that, you can throw those in there. You don't really have to mess with this too much unless you want to get into how much it probes and how many tolerated failures it can take, stuff like that. Then there's some real user measurements and traffic views. You can get into this to actually see where your traffic is coming from. This will show like a graphical chart of the world, and then you'll be able to see what countries and different users and where they're coming from, things like that. Now, where you'll need to set up is in the endpoints, your actual endpoints that you'll be connecting to. So I actually have a app service app that I've created, which I'll bring up again here. And it's basically just a website that just a static website. So it's just a static HTML website. It's using just their generic URL that they give you. I am using a custom domain, which is the app1.letmetechyou.com. And this is what's actually not being pointed at. Azure, or my DNS, is actually pointing at the traffic manager, which will then point to this app service based off how I set it up in here. So going inside of here, it's basically app service. I chose my target resource. And when you're first setting or creating one of these, let me do an add. It's going to say which type do you want to do. You can do an Azure endpoint, you can do an external endpoint, or a nested endpoint, which gives you the option to do like some nested things like multiple types of routing methods. So like if one fails, then another one can basically take over for any drops in traffic that might occur, so that you can kind of choose like, hey, I want one as weighted, then one is multi-value, so on and so forth. So we're going to be doing Azure endpoint. Let me open that back up. So I did an Azure endpoint You just choose a name. This can be anything. This just names it in here. And then it can be cloud service, an app service slot, or a public IP address. I don't have any public IP addresses set, so my app service is actually set in there. So when I choose that and choose my weight, so I only have one, so the weight's not going to really matter too much. So it would be basically be if I added another endpoint, I could have like a weight of 2, and then this could be a weight of 1. So when the apps or when the queries are coming across, it's going to say, hey, point to this app 1 first, and then the other one point to it second. If I wanted it load balanced, if this was an app that was load balanced, say, for instance, it's being shared or it's redundant, we can set both weights to the same number and it'll be evenly dispersed across. So since I already got that set up, basically now we can see, so if I query this DNS name, it's actually going to show the IP address of the actual application here, which is, let's go back up, 20, oh, let me go under network. 20.49.104.7. And the reason for that is, like I said before, Traffic Manager doesn't actually query, it's not acting as like a load balancer or a proxy. It's just a DNS, a way to serve DNS requests to efficiently send you to the correct endpoint based on your Traffic Manager profile. So if I open up my terminal here and I do a ping app 1 dot, or actually, oh yeah, so ping app1 dot letmetechyou.com. So app1 dot letmetechyou.com, this CNAME address is actually pointing to this Traffic Manager DNS name. And then if I had ping in there twice, so you can see it's going to time out, but you can see it's going to the 20.49.104.7. So it's sending it to the correct endpoint there. And then if we actually go to app 1, it's going to bring up that static website. So that's just that's it there. I'm not going to go through doing all the other types of routing methods because they're essentially going to serve the same purpose. It's just a matter of how you want to serve those endpoints to your user based on whether it be performance, their geographic location, the weights of the endpoints, depending on what the endpoints are actually doing and stuff like that. So if you want to, read more about those different weights, you can go over to my site, letmetechyou.com. I have one about Azure Traffic Manager versus the Azure Load Balancer. And this actually shows like how the Azure Traffic Manager can then send requests to different load balancers. And then this goes more into the different types of routing methods and how they're served to the client's browser. So if you have any questions in regards to this video, drop me a comment down below. I'll be sure to get back with you and help where I can. Also, check out my blog and subscribe to the channel. Again, if you have any questions, again, I'll be sure to get back with you. Again, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.